Good morning. How the devil are you doing? The buttons are playing silly buggers at the moment for some reason. I don't know why that would be. Just let me try that one more time. There we are. That's better. Yeah, you caught me on the hop, but we're ready to rock and roll. How we doing, everyone? I hope you're all feeling fit and well. Magma Magnuson has just said, any comments on Nazis? Yes, at the end of the show. At the end of the show. Yeah, I wasn't here on Friday, so a very quick recap about Friday. I was up at the Institute of Demolition Engineers spring seminar in Leeds. Very good seminar. You can read all about it over on LinkedIn or Demolition News or anywhere else for that matter. Just go and help yourself. Quite an emotional event, funnily enough, which is not what I would normally expect from an IDE event, but it was welcome nonetheless. It was very, very good. I mentioned the fact that I was going up by coach as well. I know a few of you were aware of that. Good morning, Dan, by the way. Yeah, I went up by coach by a company called Flixbus. And it was very good. Now, I admittedly, it's about a 5-hour journey from London to Leeds. But it was okay. I On the way up, I watched a movie, did a couple of podcasts and stuff. Not a problem at all. On the way back, I literally sat down. I had some notes that I'd been scrawling away at, and by the time I made it back to London, Victoria, I had already written today's article. So it was really good. And best of all, I was talking to people over lunch, and some had come quite a long distance. Some had driven, some had taken the train or whatever. People were paying 100, 130, 150. Some of them paying 200 quid to get there by train. Mine was £9. £9. How can you not like that? Only drawback was having gone budget on the travel. I decided to go budget on the hotel. I stayed at the Ibis budget hotel in the centre of Leeds. The hotel was fine. Location was fine. Not a problem at all. Woke up in the morning, ready to roll. No hot water in the shower. Not great. Not a great way to start the day. But anyway, all of that aside, just one other thing on the IDE. I was there, obviously, sat in the front row, and I was there with the great and good. To my, let me think, let me do it in the other way around. To my right was Mike Keogh of C&D Consultancy. To my left was John Woodward. Another one away was my mate Wayne Bagnall. One away from him was Dr. Terry Cornby. I'll come back to him in a minute. Then there was Duncan Riddell, the outgoing CEO of the National Federation of Demolition Contractors. The Worthing Advertiser, nowhere to be seen. They were supposed to be there. Their badge was sat there, and they didn't bother to come. Yeah. Speaking of Dr. Terry Cornby, as I was leaving, he gave me a small gift. I don't know why he gave it to me, but there you are. Can you see that? There you are. Dr. Terry Cornby, fellow of the Institute of Demolition Engineers, IDE Council of Management, and I've got his badge. One of these days that'll be worth a fortune. Lee Upton, good morning, Lee. You've just joined us as well. I mean, you've just joined us, but everybody else, Lee is in the house. Morning, Lee. And Ken Hatcher says, costs more in diesel than for the bus than £9. And here's the thing, right? So, and I'm going to make a sweeping generalization, which I realize is a very unwise idea, but on both journeys, so from London to Leeds and Leeds to London, they do a driver change. And the way it works is we went from, let me think, from Victoria to Finchley Road, and then on up to Foss Park in Leicester, then on up to Meadow Hall at Sheffield, and then to Leeds. And the change of driver on both instances was at Foss Park in Leicester. The driver that took us from London to Foss Park was, without question, the most deeply unpleasant person I think I've ever encountered. He was South African, which didn't help. I do think they have quite an abrasive accent, but he was berating people for being on their phones. He was berating people for bringing food onto the bus, even though you're allowed to do that. There are actually places where you can buy food to take on the coach at the coach station. Deeply unpleasant. However, the guy that came on to drive us from Foss Park up to Leeds arrived, big selection box of heroes, walked up and down the aisles, basically handing out chocolates to the great and the good on Flixbus. That is how you do customer service. That's my thoughts anyway. Power Plus Group USA have just joined us over on Instagram as well. Good morning to you guys. Whereabouts in the USA are you? What is it you do? Power Plus Group. Be interested to know more. So yes, should we crack on with the show? I think we probably should. Yeah, while I'm doing this, just imagine an empty chair. Worthing advertiser. That's what they're all about. Intro. Question of the day. Everything else. Here we go. It is Monday, the 3rd of March. March already. It is Monday, the 3rd of March. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, and the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming as well. In today's show, we're on a roll with Rokbak. Unlocking Your Potential with Steelwrist. That one is going to be dedicated to Gary Muirhead. We're going behind the scenes with Caterpillar, and we're making tracks with High Rail. Plus, in my morning monologue today, a Tale of Two Presidents. Yeah, look forward to that. Before we get to all that, we do have the small matter of today's mystery machine to decipher. So let me play the animation. Jim Turner is recommending that I report the grumpy driver. I don't think I'd be alone if I was to do that. And he also says it's the only way to change things by taking action. I totally agree with that. Certainly. Come back to Ken Hatcher in just a moment because I've got a mystery machine. It is the start of a new month. Now, there was a draw last month. It was me and Dan Cullen came equal first. Dan very kindly donated his prize to Peter McKenna. Peter, I will be sending it to you today because I didn't have time over the weekend. I will be doing that today. Not a problem at all. But we have the start of a new month and a new mystery machine that looks like that. If you can figure out what that is, well, you're a better man than I. I know what it is, and I couldn't identify it from that. But we are looking for, as always, a make and a model, if you would be that kind. Keep your guesses coming in, and we'll see all of that in just a moment. But before we do anything further, let me just remind you very quickly of our question of the day, which looks like this. Yeah, our question of the day once again comes from our resident quizmaster, Mr. Gary Muirhead. And his question is this: if you were to open a store, a retail outlet, a shop, what would you sell? And I find myself torn on this one. There's a bit of me that would love to sell stationery, fountain pens, notebooks, and the like. I don't know how well you can see it. There's a plethora of notebooks back there, some of which I find too pretty to actually write in. That's how sad I am. Love all that stuff, but I have a funny feeling if I ended up with a stationery shop, I'd just keep all the stock to myself. So that probably wouldn't work. So I'm going to go with a fishing tackle shop. Partly so I can borrow some of the stock, but also because I really enjoy hanging out with fishermen and fisherwomen, sharing tales of the ones that got away over pints of maggots. But what about you? What would you, if you could open a shop tomorrow at no expense, what would you be selling? That's what we'd like to know. Chris Ford. Wow, that is deep and philosophical. I'd love to sell memories as they are priceless. Well, Chris, didn't see that coming, but that's an absolute corker of an answer. Well done, sir. I'll come back to the mystery machine in just a moment. No, I'll do it now. I would do the mystery machine right now. That's what we've got so far. Jim Turner reckons it could be a JCB TM420. It is not one of those. Dan Cullen reckons it could be a Cat 956 shovel. It is not one of those. Dan also says, bit busy today cleaning the machine. We're starting on real hazardous asbestos, so machine can be easily cleaned. Keep the prep up, I would say. Jim Turner reckons he's let me take that away just for a moment. His shop of choice would be guns and banjos. I'm playing that over in my head to see if I can come up with a Guns and Roses. Guns and banjos. I'm not entirely sure I've got anything to do with that, but I like the idea. Banjos. Are you a banjo man, Jim? Do you play banjo? Do you have a banjo? Love the sound of a banjo. Ken Hatcher, a car cleaning shop. So one of these there's one in nearby shopping centre, power washer, and they do all the detailing and all that sort of stuff. You're into that, are you? I know you clean your own car with a fair old regularity. Keep those coming in. Let's have a look. There's the mystery machine. There is a little bit more. There's a bit of cab there, just to keep you guessing. If you've got any thoughts on that, please let us know in the chat. While you're doing that, I'm going to get the show actually underway with this. No, apparently Guns and Banjos is an Eddie Izzard line, bit like Cake or Death. Cake or Death, Cake or Death. Thank you. Yes, we're going to we're going to see Rokbak in action right now. You know what Rokbak do? This is how they do it.
The RA30 landed the last quarter, 2024. Looked at a few suppliers, looked at the various rigid dump trucks and articulated dump trucks. Decided to go with the articulated dumper because it's better manoeuvrability up stockpiles.
Loughran's needed a smaller machine that was more agile. It's easier to navigate around the quarry. It is carrying lighter products, so they did spec it with greedy boards.
We got the sides extended just to hold a bit more material. You want to make every ton count. You're able to get that extra bit on, still keeping in the weight limit.
The smaller truck allows a faster cycle time, and with the independent suspension, it gives a more comfortable ride to the operator. It's strong, it's tough, it does the job.
It's well made, it's a good sturdy machine. It's been good feedback from the mechanics on it and operator too.
You spend most of your week in the machine, you do need comfort. It's one thing that Rokbak definitely does have. Plenty of room in the inside of it. There's plenty of lights for night time. It's all about your visibility and what you can see and what you can't. It is a top class machine.
The operator is very happy with the vision in it, the comfort in it and the layout of the cab. If they're happy, it makes my job a lot easier.
The long-term partnership is what's most important to Slaters. It has to be a continuous engagement between the customers, Slaters and the suppliers. Slater have been dealing with Rokbak for 16 years now, and we've well established and trust between us.
In the future, I would not hesitate to use Rokbak again.
Going back to our question of the day, I've already mentioned the fact that Gary Muirhead came up with our question of the day, and I have a funny feeling he may have done so just so that he could share his own answer, which is this. He'd open a sex shop so he can enjoy his passion and his hobby and get paid for it. Well done, sir. Well done. Speaking of Gary, I'll be back with a film dedicated to him in just a moment. But there we are. There is our mystery machine. Let me show you a smidgen more. There you are. There's a bit of back end just to help you along your way. Anybody got any ideas what that might be? Let us know in the chat. Back with the film dedicated to Gary in just a moment.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, the next film is called Unlocking Your Potential with Steelwrist. We already know Gary is a big Steelwrist fan, so Gary, this one's for you, my friend. Very smart indeed. As Gary Muirhead says, Swedish perfection. Steelwrist. Hard to argue with that. I'll come back to your first comment in just a moment, Gary. But he also says, look, there's Stone Stacker Chris Ford. Yeah, nice bit of stone stacking in there. Jim Turner, going back to our question of the day, says this. Not a shop as such, but an auctioneer, mostly selling plant and agricultural machinery. Would you have the guy talking like a machine gun, doing the auctioneering? Would you have one of those? Not sure I would. And then Gary says this, and I realise he's saying this in jest, but I'm now in rehab for my obsessive compulsive disorder about Steelwrist. I don't think you're curable. I think you are beyond help. But yeah, one of my eldest sons, oldest friends, known him since he was like 4 years old, and they're both in their 30s now. Was sectioned last night. The guy is super bright, good looking fella, super fit. I mean, supremely fit. Lives in the gym and, plays a lot of golf, plays a lot of squash, good at all of them. Great job. Seemingly got everything going for him. Basically had a psychotic episode over the weekend. And mum and sister ended up taking him to hospital. And yeah, that they are now concerned that he may actually have schizophrenia. But yeah, a completely out of the blue. I mean, to this degree, anyway. Apparently, according to my son, he has suffered with mental health issues in the past. But this was literally a full psychotic breakdown. He won't be watching this, obviously. But Ben, get well soon, mate. Looking forward to seeing you back out and about. Jim Turner says, yes, definitely, but the English style, not that American tripe. So it'd be more like a cattle market then. And I'm good with that. I'm okay with the cattle market. What have we got coming up next? I can't remember. What have we got coming up next? Oh, yeah, we're going behind the scenes with Kat in just a moment. So, first up.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
I'll show you the cat bit in just a moment. But first of all, Mystery Machine. That's where we are. We're 3 frames in. We're now 4 frames in. And quite clearly, the machine in question is on wheels. If anybody's got any idea what that might be, please let me know. Yeah, Caterpillar. After hours, behind the scenes, that sort of stuff. Here we go.
With Cat Trial 14, we knew we were going to be releasing this video at the start of a huge milestone for Caterpillar, our centennial. And what better way to celebrate our centennial than to look back on the iconic innovations our employees made possible for our customers to succeed.
Artifacts and things like our machines, they tell great stories, and great stories inspire.
When we look at the museum, there's a critical gallery, which was our power gallery. We offer power to a lot of different industries that our customers rely on every day, and we wanted to really be able to show for the centennial, we're celebrating all of Caterpillar.
Our history shows where we've been. It tells the story today, but I think it gives hints about the future, and I think that's really the power behind it.
Seeing everything that we've made possible for our customers and the world in the first 100 years is pretty amazing. And knowing what the next 100 years will be is even more incredible.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be around for the second centennial of Caterpillar, but yeah, they are certainly doing a good job of promoting all of that. Going to go back to the chat very quickly. We've got this from Jim Turner, who we were talking about auctions. I've spent a good chunk of my life at auctions. Ever being able to, I guess that's since he could walk out or something like that, an atmosphere I like to be around. They are an exciting place. They are an exciting place, I have to say. Dan Cullen is going with our Mystery Machine, a Kramer SO35. It is not one of those. Let me show you, let me take Dan out of the way and show you a bit more. There you are. Bit of linkage. Does that help anyone? Keep the guesses coming. We've got a bit of a specialist piece of kit coming up immediately after this. time to make tracks. Smart bit of kit. Mystery machine. It's going down to the wire today, and nobody's got the right answer. We already know that Dan went with a Kramer. It's not one of those. JCB 419 says Dan. It's not. It's not a Wacker Neuson. Definitely not a Wacker Neuson. And Jim Turner agrees that that was a great bit of kit. I totally agree with you, Jim. Let's have a look. Let's show you a bit more. There you are. There's a little bit more Mystery Machine. We are going to be looking ahead to all things Bauma related in a moment. And I can tell you that our Bauma look ahead is only, well, it's less than a minute. So you've probably got 3 minutes in which to come up with the right answer on our Mystery Machine, or I shall claim the points. First, this.
Think you can stop what we do? I doubt it. We've got the energy, we'll tell you all about it.
Dan Cullen's going for the Gunter Grossman GG09. Never even heard of that, but it's not one of those. It's not one of those. It's a little less obscure than that. It's I wouldn't say it's obscure at all. Actually, it's a known brand, part of a bigger company. If that helps at all. Yes, we're gearing up for our Bauma mission to Munich, all kindly sponsored by MB Crusher. Here we go. Sorry, just completely distracted. Something just came up on my screen, completely out of left field. Let's have a look. Okay, yeah, it's okay. But all makes perfect sense to me now. I caught a bit of a message, and it's not what I expected, but it's okay. I'll bore you with it some other time. So, yeah, thank you to MB Crusher. Let me play you this.
Turn this TV off. Ain't want my type activity, but don't you get involved. Hey, what? How many shit I seen? Send them all. Take a risk or take a trip. You know I'm tripping for my dog.
Yeah, massive thank you to MB Crusher for sponsoring our Mission to Munich segment. No winners today. No winners. So I'm going to put this down as one for me. That's my initials and 3 points for me. I can tell you that the Mystery Machine is actually one of those. That right there is a GEL, G-E-H-L, GEL AL540 articulated loader. GEL, as you may or may not know, is part of the Manitou organisation, and it's one of theirs. So, yeah, looking forward to catching up with GEL and with Manitou at Balmer. Should be good fun. That pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue of the Tale of Two Presidents. If you can't stick around for that, then please do stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very, very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I will be back in just a moment with a Tale of Two Presidents. As I sat in the auditorium of the Royal Armouries in Leeds at the Institute of Demolition Engineers Spring Seminar on Friday last week, I was blissfully unaware of the meeting that was taking place at the White House between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and US President Donald Trump. I was seated in the front row, maybe 15 feet from the Institute of Demolition Engineers President Adrian McLean. He was sat alone at the top table on the stage. He opened the meeting by describing the delegates as the soul, the hearts, and the minds of the industry. He gave awards to those that had demonstrated their passion for and their commitment to the demolition industry. He shed a tear when he bestowed a posthumous IDE fellowship on his friend Angus Holdsworth, who tragically passed away late last year. He beamed with pride when his son Cormac took part in a joint presentation. And when one of the presenters was temporarily overcome with emotion, Adrian McLean consoled him. Adrian McLean was centre stage, but it was patently clear that this was not about him at all. It was about the IDE members and about the betterment of the wider demolition industry. So compare and contrast that with the manner in which Donald Trump berated and attempted to belittle the beleaguered, battle-weary, but dignified Ukrainian president. Now, to be very clear, this is not a political statement. I'm English. I've no say in US politics whatsoever. I'm talking purely about how two men in high office comport themselves. And what Trump did to Zelensky was nothing more than a villainous and performative ambush staged purely for the cameras. I'm sure that previous meetings between presidents and other world leaders have been heated at times. Global politics is a high-stakes game, particularly at a time of war, and everyone is determined to safeguard their own nation's interests. But this was deliberately and strategically held in the full gaze of the media, purely to show Trump as the tough guy he so desperately wants to be. He accomplished the opposite. He came across as a petty-minded bully, while his vice president proved himself to be a world-class sycophant of the highest order. Now, I'm going to say it again. This is not political. Should the US be the world police? Maybe, maybe not. Should the US be helping to fund a war that has already claimed thousands of lives? Again, maybe, maybe not. Those are questions for people far, far smarter than me. But verbally berating a man who has stood against the Goliath-like might of an aggressive and warmongering neighbour is the equivalent of kicking a man when he's down. Even by Trump's already low moral benchmark, this was a new low. Proper leaders guide, inspire, and influence others towards a shared vision. They embody traits like integrity and empathy. Leaders not only set the direction, but they also foster collaboration and empower those around them. True leaders recognize that they are not the main character, that they exist purely to represent their people. Now, I realize that the role of president of a trade institute and the head of the US are markedly different jobs requiring markedly different skills. But both roles are held by human beings. The difference is that one of them is human, while the other is demonstrably inhuman. And there's another difference between Adrian McLean and Donald Trump, one that marks one as presidential and the other as unworthy of the title. Donald Trump's message to Volodymyr Zelensky will, I'm sure, go down a storm among his rabid MAGA fan base and among the American right-wing media that now seemingly exists purely to do his bidding. Meanwhile, the other half of America will be feeling shame at Trump's actions in their name. When Trump's ambush of Zelensky was over, he had merely caused further division in an already divided country and an already divided world. When Adrian McLean closed the IDE meeting in Leeds, he did so to a membership and an industry united. To me, that's the mark of a true leader. There you are. That's my my thoughts on all of that. When I was writing that, I've got a funny feeling I've written something called A Tale of Two Presidents before. I couldn't find it, but it sounded oddly familiar. So if anybody is aware of that, my apologies, but it seemed like too good an opportunity to waste. Cool, well done, says Dan Cullen. That's my congratulations for having correctly identified the machine that I chose in the first place. But thanks, Dan. That puts me 3 points up, but there's a long way to go. I'm going to be in and out of the country a little bit this month, I think, by the looks of it. Due to be going to the Netherlands. I think we're probably heading off to Germany as well. Obviously, going back to Germany in April. Got an exciting one coming up around about June time. And as of yesterday, literally yesterday, myself and the long-suffering Mrs. Anthony actually booked a holiday, a proper holiday, not let's go to Las Vegas so that I can do Mine Expo and you can tag along for the ride. We're actually going off on a Mediterranean, Italian-heavy Mediterranean cruise. We go on the 29th of well, the cruise starts on the 29th of July. The plan is for us to go a couple of days early because we're actually catching the boat, boarding the ship in Rome. Not Rome, because Rome isn't actually on the sea. We're going to Rome for a couple of days, have a bit of a nosy around there. I've been to Rome multiple times. My wife has never seen it. So we're going to go and have a bit of a mosey around that. Jump on the train down to Civitavecchia on the coast, jump on the boat, and then we're off to places like Naples and Sicily, and Cartagena in Spain, and Barcelona, and Mallorca, and Gibraltar. And Gibraltar, I will probably stay on the boat because I'm not a fan, but there you are. Jim Turner says, Zelensky struggles with the language barrier and should really stick with having an interpreter. America doesn't need to get involved in this conflict, but if they do, they'll make sure it turns a profit for them. A prime minister president should be there to put their own country first. I agree. You do put your country first. Not a problem with that at all. Where I do have a problem is to host a meeting of that nature in front of the media purely to berate a guy that is in the middle of a war. And that, I don't know how much anyone has watched of it, but the very fact that one of their pet journalists opened proceedings by questioning why Volodymyr Zelensky wasn't wearing a suit in the Oval Office. Well, Elon Musk didn't wear a suit in the Oval Office. If anybody knows their history, Winston Churchill was basically not suited and booted the entire time that we were at war during the Second World War. He was dressed for military things. That then unleashed JD Vance, who, frankly, I mean, I have my own personal thoughts on Donald Trump, but I'm now of the opinion if I were put in a room with the pair of them, I would hit JD Vance first. I mean, it's all very well being an egomaniac, which Trump most clearly is, but to be that much of a brown nosy suck up, I could probably break my foot by kicking him repeatedly in the testicles. Peter says he's here late as a slow closing. How slow? You take an hour? Good Lord, man. Trump offered Zelensky a deal last year before he was sworn in. He must have declined it because Trump went to tap Putin up too. America can't lose in this deal, whichever way it falls. The problem is, though, Jim, the deal that is being tabled by the Americans to Volodymyr Zelensky basically means just give up. Yeah, you've been fighting for 3 years, but give up. Let the Russians have that lump of your country, and we'll all call it quits. And when we actually negotiate the terms of the deal, you're not invited. It will just be me and my mate Putin who will sit down and thrash out the details. Absolute disgrace. I mean, an absolute scumbag of a man. And do you know what I find really, really strange about all this? I said before, I find it remarkable that in a country of whatever it is, 300 plus million people, that it all came down to a choice between Joe Biden and then Kamala Harris, obviously, and Donald Trump. Is that really the best that you can do? Now, as I say, I do have my own personal issues with Trump, but having seen the way that he behaved, I'm reminded of the fact, never mind the fact that he is just not a good president, he is just a deeply, deeply unpleasant person. Quite quite possibly one of the worst people I've ever seen. You know, everything from the weird coloured skin to the hair to his egomania and his megalomania and everything about him. You know, bearing in mind, you've got a guy, I mean, even setting aside the performative nature of what he did on Friday, even taking that aside, if you've got a guy who has lost thousands of his comrades in a war, surely the default human reaction is one of empathy and sympathy and consolation. It's not, right, sit there while me and this fucking arsehole sat the side of me berate you for 55 minutes. Who does that? You know, who does that? Peter says, I like Trump till this spat. He's on the same line as Putin in my eyes. China and USA will become allies. That's, you know, there's the thing that I find strangest. Bearing in mind, and up until literally the last Con Expo, when I was talking about this, well, I was listening while a taxi driver, an American taxi driver, was yelling from the roofs about the benefits of having Trump as a president. I've grown up basically seeing Russia as the enemy. You know, going back to when you think back to the 1980s, you know, spitting image TV shows, you know, it was Ronald Reagan and Leonid Brezhnev and whoever came after him, you know, head to head loggerheads. We could go to nuclear war at any point. It even influenced things like our music. Two Tribes, Frankie Goes to Hollywood. You know, I sat through public information films when I was at school. If there is a nuclear attack, and we all knew that nuclear attack was likely to come from Russia, this is what you do. You know, bring out your dead, put a tag on them so we can identify them. All of that, everything was seeing Russia as the mortal enemy. And now we seem to have a US president who is quite happy to jump into bed with him. And think about the wider implications of that. And I realize this has got absolutely fuck all to do with what we normally talk about. But when you think about Russia and China are like that, China and Iran are like that. So you've basically got the Americans who, you know, my entire 60 odd years of life have been the Americans and the Russians like this. And now they're like that. I don't get it. I don't get it. He acted like a tough schoolboy. He spat his dummy out multiple times. Yes, he certainly did. He certainly did. And this idea of requiring fealty, you know, you haven't even thanked us. Is that what you do? Is that what you're doing it for? Do you actually want somebody who has lost thousands of his comrades to come in and say, oh, thank you, grovel, fawn? Is that really how low you are? What have we got here? Well, the thing is, why was he went to Paris shopping with his wife when the war was going on, telling people not to leave? Is that Zelensky? Don't know. Dan also says it's a hit and miss. Look at UK now giving them 2.5 million of our tax money. When I think of the wider implications of Russian expansionism, I'm quite happy with that. Because bearing in mind, you know, let's put Trump and Vance to one side here. Let's look at this from the Russian point of view. It's very, very clear, I think, to everybody that's watching this that Putin's basic idea is to restore what used to be the Soviet Union. So he will not be content, even if Zelensky goes, you know what, fuck it, there you go, white flag, help yourself. Do you really think he's going to stop there, or do you think he quite fancies a bit of Poland or a bit of Finland and basically encroaching upon what we now know as established NATO territories? I realise 2.5 billion quid is a lot of money. I you know, would I rather see it spent on the National Health Service? Of course I would. But if we sit on the sidelines and allow Putin to get away with what he's quite clearly trying to get away with, well, how soon before he's knocking on our door? How soon before that becomes an issue for us? It's crazy. Zelensky never once raised his voice. I would have. He kept bloody calm in the situation he was in. I realised I was comparing and contrasting Adrian McLean, because he's a demolition man, and Donald Trump. But compare and contrast a Ukrainian president and an American president. Regardless of all that's gone on, Zelensky has been an absolute picture of dignity throughout the whole thing. From day one, when Russia actually first set foot in his country, to the present day, he has been a dignified leader, an actual leader, a leader of men. And Donald Trump is basically, that whole thing was to make him feel good. I mean, he even said at the end of it, that will make good TV. That's not your fucking job, mate. That's not your job. I don't like how the UK doesn't look after its own first, throwing money to others. I don't have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with that at all. Starmer says, Starmer won't back Ukraine and get us a good deal. He'll just give our money away. If that stops the Ruskies getting closer and closer and closer still, I'm okay with that. Putin won't take NATO on unless he wants to start World War III. Are you sure he doesn't want to do that? There you are. That Zelensky, definitely a bloke I'd like to have dinner with and a few beers. Yeah. Although Jim takes an alternative view, Zelensky is a puppet. His strings are being pulled. I don't agree, but that's what this is all about. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Peter says the latest measures in the UK support for Ukraine to achieve peace through strength. The deal will also provide major boost to the UK economy and support 700 existing jobs at Thales in Belfast. I didn't know that. They will manufacture more than 5,000 lightweight multi-role missiles, LMMs, for Ukraine's defence. Ultimately, and I'm sure I've mentioned this before. I don't know when we made the switch. When, at the height of the Blitz, was Winston Churchill having to go before Parliament and say, the Germans are bombing the living shit out of London. Have we got enough money to fight them? When did war become a financial decision? Right? Wrong. And if you're on the right side, you fight the wrong side. Listen, I'm saying this as somebody that is completely and utterly anti-war. The very fact that 3, 4, 5, 10 million years into human existence, we still can't sort things out without beating each other up, I find astonishing. But ultimately, how does this come down to finance? We're going to make money out of it by sending them missiles. Altruism? A little country being picked on by a big country? Is that not a moral obligation more than a financial obligation? Is that not what we used to stand for? I mean, bearing in mind, we sort of leapt to the aid of the French initially and stuff. Well, not initially, but we leapt to the defence of the French. We've been at war with the French for hundreds of years, but when the Nazis pitched up and decided they quite fancied owning France, we weren't having it. And as I say, I don't remember any of this, requiring budget meetings. And, can we afford enough missiles to fight off those damn Germans in France? I don't remember that ever happening. Wonder if the interview was staged to take attention away from something else. You never know with Trump. You never know. And Chris Weld rightly says, Trump reminds me of that Tango advert. Yeah, when you've been tangoed. The money to be made through mineral rights, the missiles, is chicken feed. Yeah. Again, think about that. And listen, I realise that this is very much the American way, that they invest in overseas locations. They're not unique. China does exactly the same, but they will go, we'll third world country, we'll sort out your road network and your sewage and your power system. But when it's over and done with, when we're sat down with the UN, you will vote alongside us, won't you? And maybe we can have a chat about your mineral rights because we. But at no point in my memory, and maybe I wasn't paying attention, but at no point have we ever gone, you poor country are being taken over by somebody else, but hand over your mineral rights and we'll come to your aid. What I realise that this is the downside of having somebody come, and bearing in mind he's a failed businessman, but you have somebody like Trump who is coming at this from a business background. I realise that his presidency is entirely transactional. If I do this, I want that. That's the way he works, 100%. But at a time of war, you're going to put somebody's arm up their back to get your hands on their mineral rights and stuff, much the same as Gaza. He fancies that as the Middle East Riviera with Trump casinos and Trump towers and stuff like that. What about the human aid, the human suffering that's taking place there? But you're looking at that as a real estate deal. Volodymyr Alexandrovich Zelensky was a comedian with no political experience when he was announced that he'd be running in Ukraine's 2019 presidential election. This is all true. This is all widely documented. President Trump is probably, up until 8 years ago, was probably most famous as a reality TV star. He did the that program that I don't watch, Dragon's Den or whatever it is, over in the States. Here's the difference. 6 years later, he is an embattled wartime leader navigating a huge geopolitical upheaval as Donald Trump brings to an end years of strong American support for Ukraine. And I realise you've copy and pasted that, Peter, and I'm grateful that you did, because that's about the size of it. One of those presidents has come into office as a former comedian, been thrown into a war for which he and all other world leaders are completely unprepared. And he has stood up for his country, stood up for his people. He has been like the Iceman. He's been dignified and everything else. Donald Trump has got himself back in the White House, and from day one, everything has been about him with his silly bloody coin and his trainer sales and everything. Everything is just about him. Excuse me, bit of toast stuck in my teeth. Yeah. How is he still president? Isn't it 4 years presidency? I don't know. And I don't know quite how that pans out. But would you want to be switching out leaders in the midst of a global, or in the midst of a conflict? I don't know what the score is with that. I actually don't know what the score is there. Hats off to the bloke. Yeah, as I say, how he retained his composure in the midst of all of that. Personally, if that were me, I know Peter said that he would have been shouting. I think my default would have been shouting, but I think after about 2 minutes, I'd have just got up and left. I don't know how he stuck it out. Jim says martial law means elections are held off. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, and I realise it's a weird analogy to draw, but I always find it remarkable when you have football teams who make a substitution just as a corner is taking place. So you've got somebody coming in, hasn't actually got up to the pace of the game, and all of a sudden they're thrown into the mix. And who would want it? Is there an opposition leader in Ukraine at the moment thinking, quite fancy the top job now in the middle of a war? I very much doubt it. Who the hell would want that job? Yeah. So yes, I'm just going to quickly go back to all things related to the Institute of Demolition Engineers. You can read about the thing over on LinkedIn. I won't bore you with that any longer. What I would say is that there was a golden age of the Institute of Demolition Engineers. Can't remember the years, but because of ill health with the previous president, Dr. Terry Cornby, stepped up to the plate about a year early. So he ended up actually being president for 3 years rather than the usual 2. And his vice president was John Woodward. We all know Terry, we all know John. There was a 5-year period there where the IDE blossomed. It was the golden age of the IDE. Unfortunately, after that, it all kind of dwindled and dwindled and dwindled. Some pretty poor presidents, and it all kind of lapsed and lapsed. The best thing I can say about Friday last week is that it felt like we'd gone back to that golden age. I mean, Adrian McLean is very much cut from the same cloth as Terry Cornby and John Woodward. And I think part of it is a selflessness. And as I said in that monologue, part of what marks Adrian, but also marked Terry and John, is they were honoured to have the top job, and they were using it to make their industry and their institute better. And compare and contrast that with Trump and Vance. Compare and contrast that with other trade associations. Not the same thing. You know, it's. I mean, I mentioned a week ago that 3 of the top dogs at the National Federation of Demolition Contractors have basically used their time in office to have an advert for their own companies on the NFDC website. That's not how you do things. It's not about you. You should be honoured to have that position. Dan, Zelensky's term was originally scheduled to end in May 2024, but the ongoing Russian invasion and the resulting ongoing martial law prevented the regularly scheduled presidential election happening. So, you know, I mean, even looking at that from the other side, you know, is there an opposition leader that really fancies the job? I very much doubt it. But again, you know, Zelensky, he's done his term, he served his time, he's been, I mean, literally the entire duration, effectively, of his presidency has been one of conflict and war and battle and loss, and he's still there. Still there. Mark of a man, mark of a leader, in my opinion. And listen, I said in the midst of that, this is not actually a political thing. I mean, I do think that Donald Trump is an awful president, the worst president, and I would say worse than Nixon, without question, absolutely terrible. But this is not about that. What I'm talking about is the fact that Zelensky, Trump, and Adrian McLean are humans. 2 of them quite clearly act in a human and humanitarian way. Donald Trump, with his actions last Friday, utterly inhuman. That's what I'm saying. Peter says, now, Mark, you've given me a nickname. I've got to uphold it to the highest degree. Copy and paste to your heart's content, my friend. All that happened on Friday is the common man got to see what happens behind closed doors. It's nothing new. Just most folk don't realise it. But that is the point, isn't it? And I've witnessed this multiple times over the years. You go into a shop or a McDonald's, and there is somebody new or somebody that isn't doing their job particularly well or up to the standard that's expected. The protocol for that is to take them to one side, sit them down and say, you know, you're new or you should know better, but we're going to do this between me and you, and we're going to thrash this out. And if ultimately at the end of it, you decide this job's not for you, or I decide you're not for this job, then we'll part ways, shake hands, and send you on our way. What you don't do is go into the middle of a McDonald's restaurant, call over one of the people that's delivering food to the tables and berate them publicly, because that's not how you do things. And again, I'll go back to Trump. He has all the money in the world, but he has not 1 ounce of class. If ever you've been to Trump Tower in New York, if you've been to the Trump Hotel in Vegas, it's gold and it's ostentatious, but there is not 1 ounce of class about it. And that is Trump. Dan Cullen says, have a lovely day, guys. Stay safe, be happy, give your loved ones a hug and tell them you love them. I will be doing precisely that as soon as my loved one returns home from work. There you are. There's an hour, people. That will probably do us for today, I think. I'm going to be back tomorrow with yet more of the same. Got a nice film for you tomorrow. It's been a long while coming to bring it to you, but I've got a nice film talking about swappable electric batteries featuring Z-Quip, That's tomorrow. Until then, everybody, have a fine and fantastic day. Go and enjoy yourselves. Look after yourselves. Look after your fellow man, because sometimes they kind of need it. And I'm not just talking about Zelensky. I'm also talking about my son's mate. Keep an eye out for people, would you? Because you don't know what crap they're putting up with. Until then, everybody, have a splendid day. See you tomorrow. All the best.